Yep, we are here with you again. Um, Good night to all the viewers. Um, this has been kind of like a long hiatus for this particular um, podcast that we do, which is called The Conversation. We've been, of course, the three of us have been, involved in several activities that has kind of pulled us in all kinds of directions, but we're still trying to ensure that we're on point, um, to ensure that we bring you great conversation, great info as well. When we do have the time to all come together and have the conversations, we're waiting for Martin to jump in as well. Big shout out to Sherwin, Selector Sherwin. You'll be missing in action for a minute, um, from the conversation. So as we get into tonight's conversation, we gotta go to the disclaimer though. Before we do that, um, I'm hoping that Martin has the disclaimer ready, or I'll have to read the disclaimer before we get back. Yes, Martin, you have that disclaimer ready for us? Yeah, bro, you have the disclaimer ready?
Greetings, greetings.
Yes, bro. I was
hmm
just saying, if you have that disclaimer ready before we,
Man.
we get into it, let's have the disclaimer first, and then we can move.
All right. I was just about to fire off on the internet, people.
Yeah.
All right. The disclaimers go. The views, opinions, and statements expressed on a conversation are solely those of the individual host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Network. The content of this show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the network or the station assumes any responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice. With that being said, as always, you can Google it.
All right, that too. And of course, we got a new component to the conversation as well. You can
hmm
call us on 6410945. You can do that if you're in Guyana. You could just add it on WhatsApp. You could call me, or you can call direct, and you will get directly in, and as well as Martin.
Yes, 305-713-8595.
95. All right, so let's get into tonight's conversation. We're gonna have several topics today. Although Martin has still kept the topic as "Cry of Our Nation,"
Yes, yes,
so
yes.
I guess we're gonna be talking about several topics. Um, I don't know about the cries, but let's see where it goes in terms of um, these different topics that we're gonna be dealing with. So let's kick it off, bro.
All right. So, of course, the topic is based on how we feel as we go through. For us, well, for me, we haven't been, on the conversation quite some time. So, while we
Yeah,
don't apologize, we do look forward to welcome all the new viewers and listeners,
yeah,
right? And we are here. We're in a second season. If we want to make it official, we're in a second
yeah.
season. We take a land break. We had a couple of things going. We do have several other shows and platforms running. So, for the recurring listeners and viewers, you guys would have been keeping up with us in the morning time on the Rush Guinness Industry Show,
The show, yeah.
right? And following along all week. I mean, I think we would have been making history over and over, as one good friend said to me.
Yeah,
Y'all don't know what y'all just doing out there.
yeah. Well, I think we know we do it. That's why we doing it.
Eh-heh.
So, yeah. What aspect of what's happening in our country today do we start the conversation off on? Because there's been so much happening since we took a break from the first season.
Correct, correct, correct.
And
So,
now we're back. So there's so much.
um, let's start with now, and we could go back, right? To
Sure.
see.
Yeah.
Um, we're in election season, right? I
Yeah.
think the official date for election would have been announced, which is September 1st,
The first. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And just to be the devil's advocate and a very strong critic, I think that is stupid. Because if I'm right, and let me pull up my calendar, we like to make sure everything is official on the side.
Can you guys hear?
September 1st. Yes, brother.
No, go ahead,
Yeah.
Martin.
September 1st is a Monday. And I would want to think that just out of the summer vacation, that is when school would be opening also.
Mhm.
So to hold elections, the beginning of the school term or the school year, as some would call it, don't make sense to me. Because that means, again, for another reason, the children ain't to school. Because we know election is going to take a couple. So how does it usually work in Ghana? Does it take a couple of days to verify and swear in the president, or
Well,
how does that work?
actually, it's supposed to really take a day
Mm,
because even in countries with 300 plus million like the US, it does take a day.
mm,
All right. So with just about 800,000 people, it should be able to take a day. Hopefully, based on the new instituted laws that they have now, we're going to
mm.
have faster verification processes.
All right.
Um, I don't. I don't think it's too much of a clash with the school children because on the 1st of September, a lot of people don't even start they going out on the first, and you know I don't think everything should be held up because yeah I don't think things gonna be held up because because of school. Everybody is like a normal day. People just go to the place. People just go to the place of voting and vote. Not unless we have individuals who are looking at it from a standpoint that if we vote in today, well, that means nothing ain't happening that day.
I now I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be sending my child or children to school and you going out for vote because of what the atmosphere usually brings, right?
Yeah,
So,
but this is the thing that we have to stop. Um, I think propagating.
mm,
Um, a voting day is not a day for anything to happen. A voting day is for voting. There shouldn't be any atmosphere of anything because nobody knows who you are voting for, right? So
correct.
nobody knows who you're voting for. So your vote is your private matter. When you get in the box, you know who you vote for, and you come out and you go along your business. If you have to go to work, you go to work. Voting day is not a day, and this is the thing with Guyana that I think a lot of people get um, getting this thing with. Okay, well, if it's election day, well, you got to put aside. No, you don't have to put aside a day. You get in the line, just like it happens everywhere else in the world. You go vote, and when you finish, you either go home or you go back to work. It's a simple thing like that. There shouldn't be any loitering or people claiming they're sticking around. Like the last time I saw some individual said, oh, they're sticking around to make sure that the ballot was safe. I'm like, but you're not security. The Guyana police force and the people responsible for protecting the ballot box are the people who are doing that. So these kind of things about people who saying it's a tense, it's tense. That's something in your mind because why is voting day tense for anybody? I don't understand. Why is voting for somebody of your choice a tense day? for anybody.
So I think in America,
Uh-huh.
there's no school, and majority the businesses don't function, right? At least the public servant sector. And then where does
Last
the
voting day.
ballot usually
Well,
be
well,
kept?
well, let me show you this. Last voting day, and I'll tell you exactly where I was. I'm talking about in the U.S. I'm standing right on the Fulton, under the train, under the train line. I'm at a bodega having a sandwich, and my bro is going over the road at the polling station to vote.
Mm.
So, and that was in the evening. During the day, I didn't know what was going on because we weren't out and about. But in the evening, everything seemed to be quite normal. Um, People were going out to vote, jumping out of the vehicle, go vote, come back out. They're gone. So it was to me that was a pretty normal exercise. I didn't feel an air of tension in the air, like you know something is gonna go wrong. They might be rioting, looting. Somebody can get shot. No, nothing of the sort. So I do believe that that is the atmosphere that we should have in Guyana. I don't think we should have an atmosphere where people feel any form of tension, where
Mm.
oh because it's election day, okay, well I'm tense. No, what has happened in the past, those kind of behavior, bedlam, I would call that. Those things are things that we should try as hard as possible to erase from our psyche, our consciousness, because them kind of riots we've been having since 1992 and all of that. Who wants to have those things because of an election?
So nobody naturally wants that. And so that is where my concern come in. Why would you put it legitly on a school day when you have I believe it's 6 months from the date of the last election, right? So they have between May and September, if I'm right. You could choose any other day, not the first day of school. You could choose before school, and then naturally we're looking at several other things happening within the month of September itself, like education month.
That's a good thing, though. That's a good thing. They should be looking at it during the time there for real. Because if education month coming up in the time of elections, yeah, a lot of people need. And I don't think we're going to have a very tense elections this time because based on what we're seeing with the amount of crossings, with opposition members leaving the opposition to go over to the ruling party, there's not going to be any tension, not unless there's orchestrated tension. That's the
Well,
only thing
as
that we
some
have to
did
think.
predict.
I mean, that somebody they may try that. Some people, some elements may want to disturb what's happening, but I do think the military and the police force should handle those situations because that's on election day. They should have absolutely no unrest or any foolishness like that going on because
Mm,
everybody has got to have their opportunity to go there and vote.
correct.
So there shouldn't be any tension. People must feel free as possible. It must be a free situation where everybody feels quite comfortable to go out and vote for who they please. They mustn't feel tense because of maybe previous ideas of riots and whatever. Those are the things that I think need to be kind of like, dispelled because in every other country, governments change every day. In Trinidad, governments change, Barbados governments change, and we don't see a lot of that. We don't see that stuff happening. So I don't think we should focus a lot of energy on that. What we should focus on is really what is happening in terms of one, the upcoming election, what the parties are bringing to the table in their manifestos, because all I'm seeing so far is mention of manifestos. I've heard the PPP said their manifesto is going to be out in a couple of days. I've heard no other party, the AFC, the VPAC, VPAC has a manifesto out.
Yes, VPAC
Right?
do have a manifesto.
They have
I'm
a
yet
20,
to read it.
right. I did read some of it, and like I mentioned on the morning show, the problem I have with a lot of the opposition um, coming in now is that they don't have any ideas. Why I'm saying this is because if you telling me what the PPP offered at that time by giving out $100,000 grant based on the money we're getting from Exxon is not sufficient, and you're trying to tell me vote you in because you're going to give me 400,000 or you're going to give me $1 million, really is not enough for me to even look at you as like, are you serious? Or you just
Yeah, it don't make
mimicking?
sense.
It don't make sense. One, you're mimicking something that is a reality already, which is the grant that the government has already set up, which the incumbent basically has set up. You're not coming with a strategy that shows me, because I remember carefully all of the opposition parties saying during the time period when that 100,000 grant was being given out that Guyanese were going into serious economic debt and crisis because of that $100,000 that was going to be given out. That we were going to be in debt based on that 100,000. Now it's like they might do a full 360 and they realize, okay, well, instead of giving out 100,000, why don't we give 1 million then? Why don't we give 4 to 500,000? And those kind of suggestions to me is really here brain kind of thinking comes in, because anybody with any logical sense on economics knows that inflation is something that will destroy your economy, especially if you add that kind of money liquidity to the environment suddenly and people are not working.
Well, keep in mind, these are the set of people who have a problem counting, with maths in general. So, just like you said, I don't necessarily look to them for anything of those sorts, especially once it's not nothing new, because I would have asked persons, let me see what going on with the PNC, and they would have sent me to a website, the PNCR website. And I'm like, well, so I'm looking for something that says manifesto, like how VPAC have their thing say manifesto. And I am seeing a bunch of information like press release, and I'm being told, well, this is the manifesto. I'm like, so I know I went far in school, but for some they might feel like I didn't went far in school. But
No, no. My question is for you guys living in Guyana, right? Just a question in the interest of voters, because I'm not trying to be on any side. Now, in the interest of voters, is there for the past 5 years, right? What we've seen happening in Guyana with all the opportunities presented and all the finances poured in more than ever before since we became an independent nation. Um, is it satisfactory of the way all of this within that 5 years was governed by the present government? That's my question.
I'm kind of I'm getting two parts of the question here, Sherwin. You mentioned was it independence?
So I said from the time we became an independent nation,
Mm-hmm.
this being actually the first time that we've been having, or we've had the opportunity to have a more outpour of a major resource
Yeah,
into the economy. And it has actually project somewhat a better or a more better picture of what Guyana should be within a certain amount of time because of what they are already calculating. But
yeah.
within the 5 years, the present government
Hmm.
satisfactory how they've handled everything that has poured in.
Well, let me say this. Um, Personally, when I say satisfactory, I am satisfied with what I have seen in terms of the infrastructure so far. Because one of the things I note is that in 2020, when they had their manifesto, they stated and they outlined, we're going to do this, we're going to build the bridge, we're going to upgrade the roads, we're going to upgrade the sewage and water system, we're going to do certain things. Now, I think everybody in Guyana has seen the rapid infrastructural change that has happened over the period of time. All right. Now, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I've said that over and over and over. The rapid infrastructural change, that's fine. But where problems come in for me is once you have that amount of one injected capital, rapid infrastructural change, and you did not have a secure monitoring system on all of this monies and stuff that's being done, you're going to find yourself, yes, a lot of the projects will be done. Yes, you will get to showcase that you have been able to deliver on a promise. But then there are some minor issues that will then come up. One, you did not ensure that you had proper, adequate monitoring of these, let's say, these projects on the ground. All right. I'm not talking about all of them because some of them I've seen them and I say, yeah, this is proper monitoring. But there are some of them, honestly, and this is not to bash the government as per se, but this is to give them an overall perspective of what systems need to be in place. You need to monitor a contractor, especially when you hand him the contract and you said, okay, I'm giving you this road to do. You have to know one, this road is for what? Is it a road in a neighborhood where it's not supposed to be a traversed area for large vehicles and trucks and all of that? Or is it a thoroughfare or a highway? All right. So that means the mixture, the way the road is constructed, sorry, the PCI, as in the mixture of the cement, is also different. Now, one of the problems that is gonna pop up, and I can say this now because it's a future problem. In some of the neighborhoods where some of these contractors have been given the the contracts to do the inner roads, I can say straight off the bat, the PCI mixed with the cement and the sand, they need to monitor them because a lot of them are injecting a lot more sand than cement. Now, what happens in those circumstances is that the blame will then go to the government because they can say, the government got this contractor to do the job, and this is what happened. So they're handing out contracts, yes, but what needs to happen, and this is something that we've talked about several times on the radio, Martin and I, it's the follow up. It's the same thing like what we talked about, like giving out the grants from the Ministry of Culture, Youth, and Sport. You have given out a grant, for example, the guy to create Richard Bahini to create a database and a website, which we haven't seen till now. We could pull it up right now, and it's not there. And there was no follow up. They have given grants to artists, producers, etc. But where is the follow up to ensure that whatever we gave you this monies to develop, that you're actually doing it with that and not taking it to do something else? It's like in the case of the cash grant, where you remember we mentioned, Martin, who would be given a ex-convict or even a guy who have a criminal record, who giving he 100,000?
That is the oversight that we're lacking, the management system.
Is what we're talking about. The oversights. You can't give. You could say, listen, we have no problem with the cash grant, but we have a problem with you handed one dumb dunce thugs 100 grand. So they went and buy guns, and you see some of them online too. You see some of these guys online, honestly. Like there was one of them that gave me stitches. Honestly, I nearly fall out my chair. I'm looking at this guy. He has a gun. He's brandishing the gun. He has on a mask. And apparently, like tear gas got into wherever he was. And he was like, hold on, hold on. The man go to the sink, pull down his mask, wash his face, and come back to the camera. Right? And come back to the camera. And then talking about, well, hey, the pepper spray hot, buddy. Duh, 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 duh. And his face is now on the camera, but he was just brandishing a weapon. Now, this is what I'm talking about. Now, come on, government. You could have give honest, law-abiding citizens in Guyana 200,000. Right. Give them 1,000 and omit these criminals. Because these criminals ain't contributing nothing. You understand? So that's an oversight, as you said, Martin. And these are some of the things that we talk about. These are like major oversights, not only in that area, but in other areas as well.
I agree. So to answer Sherwin's question, for me, generally, I am not satisfied. Right? And I say this because I always go back to the fact that I am only 30 years of age. And while I do understand this is the first time they have ever had this amount of money, and this is the first time each individual in government ever seen this amount of money. So naturally, none of them knows exactly what to do with $1 trillion plus. I wouldn't know what to do with $1 trillion plus, right? You mute them, Malachi.
Yeah, we call them nouveau riche. When you now get money, man, you now get money in nouveau riche. Listen,
Correct.
Guyana is a nouveau riche country. We gotta admit it. We
So-
move from the back of the class to the front of the class in a day.
Who is the teacher at this point?
And I think this is where you see this is where maturity comes in, and being a government that wants to serve, you got to make sure in these circumstances that you have great advisors. That you could have people that could come in and say, "Listen, this is what you want to get into. This is how it got to." It's just like a businessman. A businessman don't know how to spend his money. His accountant actually guides him of where he's going too much, where he's investing too much, where he got to cut back, these type of things. And if you have a country where everybody just calling the shots to say, you know what, when I go Barbies today, I can just carry down up 5 million and just bless people. You know, or when I pull up on this side here, I got partner there, I give you a little walk. So you just pull out the next set of money, you're gone and do that. So with that now, it throws everything off. Instead of you sitting and having the respect where money comes out of one source, one area, it has to be accounted for properly with everything that's being done. But you know, I mean, that's why I asked the question, because I don't think it is satisfactory, because even the VP comes out and I don't know if it's because of embarrassment or it's because of feeling a certain way because of the people that came into the country, more than one internationals that came in on several different occasions and had to face the roads that was just built, newly built. Had to face
Well, let me just say something about that particular thing, right? Now, I heard when Marco Rubio came to Ghana, he said that, you know, he almost got a concussion on the Heroes Highway, da da da. Now, I travel on the Hero Highway. Martin traveled on the Hero Highway. I'm quite sure that a lot of people who have come to Ghana and are in New York, they have come to Ghana and recently they've traveled on the Heroes Highway. Now, what I think was happening there with what Marco Rubio was saying, and a lot of people have to kind of, you see, Guyanese have to also juxtapose a lot of statements they hear with the political climate at the time. All right. Now, what was happening there is that there is American interest versus Chinese interest in the same space. Now, Exxon is American interest. The road building, the bridge constructions, and all of that are Chinese. So of course, there is a trade war one, and there is the power struggle between them, who owe who, and how we gonna work out.
I don't think there should have been a lie that the Chinese did that road.
No, well, the thing is, the
Chinese
Chinese,
did not do that road because you know the Chinese did better road in Guyana. The
yeah,
Chinese
the
are
Chinese didn't do
doing
that.
better road in Guyana. So there should
So
not be a lie that the Chinese did that road. So he goes away with that type of.
No, but who told him that though? That's the thing you got to look at though, Sherwin. Who told him? I'm quite sure the government didn't tell him that.
But anyway, other than that too, on the Heroes Highway, I travel on the Heroes Highway, and before that was even because I went a couple of months before to Guyana, before that thing happened, and I driving, and all I could say, bro, is this really a new road? You just think it's going up and down, and then other than that too, right?
Mhm.
I made a comment that the Heroes Highway could have been a 3-lane road with that
Mm.
strip. That strip that's in the middle there, that Heroes Highway could be a 3-lane road on both sides.
you want to take away the strip? How we can hang we flag and the people flag when they're driving in?
It could be only a strip of island for you to stop and cross. Because that's a highway. A highway, nobody is supposed to be lingering there. You know what I mean? That's the only thing is.
So
Even, even
this
the
again
exit,
where the oversight comes in, brother. We
even the
are doing stuff that we
even
would have never done before.
but even the exits is messed up because the exit, you got some big culverts on the exit. Wherever the exit should be a smooth curve off and
No,
get
well,
it in.
You see, Sherwin, I totally agree with you with that part when it comes to the entire how the design they're doing these things. One of the things that all of us
Very,
have spoken about in private is one, building codes, right? Are we going to be, for example, in the city and in where they're constructing new housing and buildings and all of that? Are they going to be implementing building codes? Because one of the things we know from Georgetown, which the mayor and city council has to take full responsibility for, is the fact that they do not enforce building codes. I mean, if you go into areas like, for example, South Rhineville, North Rhineville, you have everything possible happening in there without a coding system to say, well, hey guys, if you're going to build a supermarket, if you want to have a nightclub and stuff, this is where those things can be built, or anything in that. But residential areas, this is where only houses will be. I mean, if you want to be in the city, like if you're in New York and you want to be in Brooklyn, when you leave your apartment, you can wear a bodega on the corner. But if you go to Queens, you ain't got no bodega on the corner.
yeah, but
And
this is where I said that that should not, for me,
yeah,
the city would normally enforce certain things. But building codes, for me, I believe
mhm,
it should come out from the Ministry of Housing. I believe that they should spend money for a department to that end, countrywide, to make sure people build according to codes.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
you cannot
I
just
agree.
focus on the city. If you focus on the city, it's only the city can get the codes. All the other places is not going to get codes. So
Mhm.
you want the Ministry of Housing. So it's like you getting all this money, but all you're doing is thinking about what the people like. Remember, I always say this thing, the
Mhm.
wood syndrome. That's my talk.
Eat from the inside.
Everything look bright and beautiful, but when you really go and touch the wood, it's really
Rotten.
no road. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So all these things are being shown for you to say or make a speech, but really the root, the infrastructure of what you're supposed to have.
The foundation of it.
Correct. So make sure that you can say my people are supposed to be safe even in their own homes. I'm
Yeah.
safeguarding people's health. I'm safeguarding people's security. All these things is what a government needs to do, and they got to spend money on that.
Hmm. They have well. I'm glad that you touched on that health part, because one of the things I don't want us to forget before we get too far into tonight's conversation is the aspect of there's a new COVID variant, the NB. 1.8.1. All right, it's been already found in Australia, in China, and in parts of Europe. All right. Now, the Minister of Health 3 days ago gave a press statement to Newsroom, Frank Anthony, who basically was saying that, in a nutshell, that the ministry is being proactive. They've heard of the new strain, so they are going to be proactive in terms of setting up the areas for isolation, testing for the regional hospitals, for the main hospitals. But one of the things I also want to say while I'm talking about this very quickly is that while we have, yes, the Ministry of Health, they have to take the precautionary measures to ensure the overall protection of the population. I think that people also in the population have to be educated and take the education seriously and know that, listen, there is a virus out there. So if we are going to do certain things, we're going to expose ourselves to it.
So
That
it's
All
must
right.
be the hardest thing for we people, brother. We people take the entire COVID season for a laugh and party session.
Well,
So
and then what happened? And then what happened? The results of that did show, didn't it? And then you
correct.
hear a lot of them cry after because family members went.
I mean, but nobody still didn't care. And even so, while you would look at it from that standpoint, we traveled a lot during that period. I would look at it more from that aspect because we know every time we come in from them plane, at least 5, 10 different people coughing their lungs out. And coming through the airport, there was no sanitation in order. They had a couple booths at a certain high peak period,
Mhm.
but them nurses and doctors wasn't testing anybody or nobody wasn't being sanitized as you come through the corridor and all these things, which is stuff that I would like to see happen. We got well at least 10 corridors at this point, I believe. So put that sanitation booth soon as you walk off the plane, you
Well,
passing through that
well,
sanitizer.
what I think is going to be happening now, because based on the report, and if I go to, let's say, Reuters, it says that it's fast, it's more contagious than COVID-19. That means it's going to be a rapid spread if it gets out there to a certain point. If
Back to
people don't
Mars,
take
man.
the necessary precautions, if we do not, again, um, and this is something that we spoke about many times on the show. During
Correct.
COVID, we said, Guyana, we're pretty laissez-faire with the whole issue because we know, hey, listen, we don't even live close to each other. We're not in apartment buildings and all of that. We're basically in houses separate. All right. I think this is why COVID did not have the impact it did on, let's say, like the US and other bigger countries with people living in these apartments and having to share central air and all that kind of thing. But in Guyana, we have an opportunity to be totally safe if we go with certain guidelines. We don't even really have to have, as far as I'm concerned, the flu injections or these COVID injections, because the way we live in Guyana, with the food, with the amount of trees, with the amount of space, I mean, how much more social distancing we want in Guyana? We good to go here, you
man,
know. So I think
we like party, bro. They got us
but
so
no, that no, well, that's the part. No, well, that is, like Martin mentioned earlier, that's the part we got control. We
party.
have to control the part. We
But
can't say, well, take.
then again, it shows how nasty society is, right? Whereby people don't necessarily care. Growing up, if you cough, you got to cover your hand, your face, everything. You got, your wipe. Me being a Muslim, if I sneeze in my hand, I kind of wash my hand very fast. Not even just a Muslim, but in general. Me want to sneeze and left little snot for me, or you put your clothes. I gotta change my clothes. If I eat, I wash my hand. If I use the washroom, I wash my hand. If I come out from the sun, I wash my face and everything. A lot of people don't do these basic stuff to keep themselves in line.
What?
So the question to ask is from COVID, right? Which was about 6 years ago.
No,
From
five.
5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
from COVID then to now, is the health system in Guyana improved that they will do better than they did then?
So
Well,
I think we do have more space as in these new hospitals. So
yeah,
fully quarantined, fully,
we can do
while I don't
we can
believe
do a
we
lot
do
better.
have the machinery, at least all of the system,
We can do
they
a lot
should be
better.
able to combat.
Yeah, they can be able to do a lot better, Sherwin. I'll tell you why. During the first wave of the pandemic, when we didn't know anything at all, like what the heck was going on, you understand? And people were just getting sick and end up going to the hospital. And then Guyana really got the information that, hey, it's COVID and stuff and stuff and stuff. Although people were kind of upset, okay, the government took certain buildings and say, okay, we're going to turn this into isolation spots, right? We in Guyana did not really fully recognize the seriousness or the gravity of what was going on with that pandemic at the time. Because people were saying, oh, the government could take a man building and just isolate people. But if they didn't do that with our very small population, we'd have had a lot more infections. And with a lot more infections, you have a lot more problems to deal with. Your hospital would have been overcrowded at that point. Lucky we didn't have those issues, bro. Right? This is what I'm saying. At this point in time, we've already gone through one pandemic. If another one is about to befall us, I think that Guyana, I don't know about the other countries. I sorry for them with their millions of crowded people in these cities. But I know that Guyana is in a way better position to handle any of these infectious diseases that come out. And but mainly, I think mainly for us and escaping these kind of pandemics is education of the population. Because if they understand how they can prevent it from happening, I think there's less people in the hospital anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that,
Yeah.
that's something that gotta be put in place in the sense of communication. Well, we know social media is one of the biggest thing right now in Guyana. So
Nah, we are taking social media as information dissemination, brother. Sorry.
but
We
No,
need to bring.
no.
they,
Mr. Frank, listen here.
really,
Listen, Frank Anthony has got to do what his ministry is supposed to be doing, which is really supposed to be getting on the ground one, sensitizing, spending money to get PSIs, because the Ministry of Health is supposed to have a lot of PSIs. When COVID was there, they had a PSI that came out that says, okay, wash your hands after this, da da da, don't touch your eyes, da da da. All right. Now, what happened to continuous reinforcement? And I'll explain what is continuous reinforcement. Everybody who has traveled in New York City and gone on the subway and gone on the train has heard a voice that says, if you see something, say something.
that's
That's a program. They
Brother,
program you.
from 9/11. That's what it
no,
proved.
don't even look at America, right? But we in my time we had something when Deck Salt was advertising and being
All
promoted.
right.
Use
It
Deck
was the
Salt to get
goiter.
protection against
Ionized
big
salt.
and golden section. We had this entire thing going around for at least 5-10 years.
For
If we can do
area.
simple thing like that for the mosquito problem that we have with the dengue, for
Yeah.
any type of disease or any type of information sharing, if we can't mass produce commercials and everything in between, then we failing we people. We have
Well,
the technology way better than we had then. We got NCN got how much radio stations and televisions under them, and then we have all these private entities plus paid influencers if we want to use them. I mean, come on.
no, well, here what happened. I am a staunch advocate against having influencers involved in real information dissemination. You know why? Influencers have to be paid somehow. All right? They have to monetize some way. there is always a direction to monetize. That's not news. That's not information dissemination. That is
Correct.
creating sensationalization to make money. That's a different thing. This is why when I do morning shows and we talk about some of these topics, I say, listen, the government should have never. These are some of, like you mentioned again, Martin, the blunders that they should have never. They're unforced blunders. One, you never destroy the state mechanism or the state media to allow any private media to be able to trump that. That's one. And in no country does any private media trump the national media. When? It never happens.
Hmm.
So any information that is coming from the government really is not disseminated on a Facebook platform. It's disseminated by the national media network. And all the other networks who get licensed have to facilitate that information going on their network as well. Or else
Right.
you won't have a license because that is information for your viewing audience.
Mm-hmm.
These things are, listen, this is why.
But that's where you got to reinforce or enforce those policies so that it becomes. You see, there's a thing with people.
Well, in this case, that would be an upgraded policy, Mobile. That would be upgraded policy
No,
because that
because
it
the
was
thing is that people have gone away so far from
structure.
TV structure or radio structure that now that they don't want to they just go to Facebook to see what's next instead of
No, no, no. Listen, you could also use social media, but what I'm saying, NCN, for example, if they broadcast the information, they are supposed to be in command. Just like you see CNN and MSNBC in the US, they're in command of the regular TV, and they also have all that information on social media as well, in
Yeah,
short versions.
short version
All
summarize.
right? Exactly. But it is coming from a source that is credible, which is a trusted source. This is what you got to understand about media. Now, in Guyana, you have influencers who are doing the attempting to usurp the power of the standardized the media, and they're the media structure. In no way in the world that happens. How?
Well,
And that was again an unforced error where, for example, a lot of the government officials would then use Facebook, like Martin pointed out, a lot of them are on podcasts because that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Ministers are not supposed to be having podcasts. If there's anything, you appear on a podcast.
Right now, the age you get younger in it.
All
I
right.
was expecting to see some type of update on the new laws that would have been passed a couple
Well,
of days and
well,
weeks ago.
this is stuff where, I mean, you got to call you. And
Well,
you got, if you have ideas that you want to put out there, bro, get yourself a PR team.
so it coming like the frightening for Carl Wayne and pay we some type of,
Yeah, like,
compensation for these works,
get a professional PR group of people to handle these situations. I'll show you on forced blunder, right? And this is in no way to really digs to the gut of President Ali. But President Ali, seriously, you made a blunder. You got to accept that you made a blunder. And here's where you made the blunder. When those three pathologists came into Guyana and they gave the report, which whatever they did, I'm not a pathologist, I couldn't care. They did their job. They handed that information over to the Guyana police force. I am thinking that as the head of the health, the Ministry of Health, I would think because it falls under the ambit of the doctor, the pathologist, and all of that, it would go under health. That then Mr. Frank Anthony, who was sitting right at the table with the president at the time, would have been the most qualified individual.
but is Frank a doctor?
Yes. All right. He would have been the most qualified individual
Okay.
to read the autopsy report. So you have a case where you basically did an unforced blunder and you caused the politicization of that situation by doing that.
But
That's straight up.
Irfan is a doctor.
Who is the doctor?
What?
Irfan, they don't say this. They normally address him as Doctor Irfan.
So in
No,
2025,
there's a
where
doctor of medical and there's a doctor of philosophy. Those are two different things.
so in 2025, where a doctorate degree is not hard to obtain, right? I'm not saying anything about the president's doctoral degree, but I've done at least 1,000 graduation over the last 5 years, right? This is what I do to make a living in America. And I've seen speakers being honored with their doctoral, degrees and so on within the respective areas. So anybody could come and be a doctor. Now, like Malachi said, I personally feel the same. I would have preferred the head of the hospital, right? Or the minister himself to come and speak out and read that information that was handed over. From the president had to do that. I had to look at you like, do you know what you just did? Now, so I want to expand on that a little bit more. And this is where the information sharing, and this is for Kwame Mackay now, right? Because we would have sat down. I personally sat and said, Minister, I live in America, and the way information is being shared across the borders is very wrong. Now, this is the Minister of Information, right? I would have said it publicly also. I think I made posts on social media even before I came to Guyana. Now, I don't want to be in Florida and watching Melly Mel, Rickford Burke, or anybody else share information about Guyana when it's more concerning for me and my family. Is right? So I personally just go directly to the DPI page, especially if you guys listen to the radio show in the morning. We read directly from the DPI's page.
Correct. We read the government's information directly from their Ministry of Education information.
Now, I said what I said. The day the autopsy was done, and I have to place the blame not on the minister, but on the father also, right? But more so on the minister because he's in charge of information. So you got to take the blame for that. The father came out of the hospital, collected his daughter, and then turned directly to the camera and said, there's no justice for me. And I said, oh my God. Now, naturally, he didn't know what he was doing. But right after that, the entire Guyanese population went into chaos. Now, how do you allow one man to cause so much disruption when you had the control? Now, for me personally, instead of the president sitting there next to the Minister of Health, I would have preferred, since you like to be a man on the ground, a man of the people, I would have preferred you be right there and grab the man by the neck and say, come here, let me take you home. Because you're a man of the people, right? I mean, of course, he's doing too much at that point, but still, let me get Jackie, right? Or had a motorcade escorted that man and his family back to your house and not just riding on a motorbike, scraping up the road and say, maybe I'm saying, whatever he said. Brother.
The man said, let's start because he can get no justice.
Brother.
Yo.
I mean, of course, this is a father who's grieving. I personally can't feel the man pain. I would never feel the man pain. I don't want to feel the man pain.
No,
I got cheering on my own.
I don't want to
Right?
feel it either.
But for somebody who have control, if you could control a situation, you should control the situation. The president played a part in reading the information because it wasn't completed. and he was the wrong person to read it. That was one. The
Wrong
minister,
thunder.
the minister that lead down, as I said, Kwame, he should have been here to cover that man mouth. It might sound wrong, but literally, if you could cover that man mouth, you could have covered the man mouth.
Just step in my ears and say, Chief, let Anthony read this thing. You don't read this thing. Let Anthony read.
Even all of that, they should have, if they say they were helping the family, they should have put several layers in place to say, hey, let me provide an SR team for you. Let me support. This wouldn't cost any amount of money, from
the
anybody.
Thing is, I don't think any of us really know the amount of support that was really provided. What we were given information to was the fact that the president said he will do everything possible. The lawyer said that the president brought in the pathologist of their choice, etc., etc. But what happened, I think, where things kind of went off was after the three pathologists did the examination and stuff, and he didn't further re-engage with the president regarding the investigation and the aspect of that. Instead of that, like you rightfully said, instead of going home and handling it through his lawyer now, saying, okay, what's the next step? How do we then maybe let's go to forensics toxicology, which I think would have been the smarter thing to do than to just, as you rightfully said, jump on the back of a bike and say, well, I ain't getting this. And scrapes. Because at that time, it was pretty fresh. All right. The body was pretty fresh. Whatever, like the white lady in Georgia who did the second autopsy pointed out, that, that time period that, had lapsed because you had a lot of what, as she described, artifacts in that autopsy now that she had to do, because of course there was embalming that had to be done to keep the body. There was other stuff done to the body in the first autopsy. All right. So because of the time frame, it put all of this in a state of kind of limbo. But what, like you rightfully pointed out, I do believe that when this thing happened, they had the time, instead of allowing things to go chaotic, they should have focused. Like, you remember when you first told me about it and I started investigating it, I said, why are they worrying about tearing down a building and all of that? You need every single piece of thing to be able to piece this crime, if it's a crime, back together again. So you don't burn the evidence. You don't loot the area. You don't destroy anything in there. It's got to be totally cordoned off. And everybody who's involved, who worked there, who, even if you was on a day off and you was working at that hotel, obviously you would have to be questioned as well. Because you would have a back information that those people on the ground, you're trying to figure out or trying to get information from the scene. Go ahead, Sherwin.
The security force did not take responsibility in protecting that place. Because when the people rushed in, all this, the police was just standing around. Everybody was just
you saw it in the video. You saw it in the video. The police were just standing there.
No way of saying, okay, let's push everybody off certain distance and let us take control of the area. And that's where professionalism comes in.
Control.
You can't blame them, naturally.
They haven't been they haven't been taught to deal with these
exactly.
So what are you trying to tell me? In main areas like the west side, coming over to the city, and all these main areas, you telling me there is no how you suddenly could get riot squad, this person, that person to come out, and you can't just tell people, in case of anything concerning a situation, you have to know how to take control of the area
and be able to deploy.
You have to know who first to call. What's the first steps? What's the steps?
Well, Sherwin, this is why Martin mentioned a time about the SOPs, the standard operational procedure, right? And now I noticed, and we were talking about this before we got on here, and we got to elaborate on it, which was the whole taser issue. Um, well, Martin, you could continue, because how many years ago did you come to Guyana and propose the issue of having tasers and pepper
Five
spray,
years.
and we were
Five
trying
years.
to get it in the system?
During the height of the COVID, I was here asking and lobbying in a sense for tasers because I am in the security business. But I was going to say Guyanese generally are not security conscious. We like to party. We like to have a good time. We don't
Yeah.
think about the problems or the probability of something going wrong. So naturally, we have that to work against us in every single area, right? In the case of the hotel situation, I do believe personally the police dropped the ball. But then again, when I look at how the police and the army does train, these men train in the jungle, these men train in the warfare aspect of things. These men don't train in the city.
They don't. You see what they're supposed to have? They're supposed to have an urban mock-up, right? And when we say an urban mock-up, somewhere up the highway, they got a couple buildings that kind of shape up like it's a tongue, and you get them to practice hostage situations, rescuing hostages, all these kind of things, which, of course, we know based on what was said, we have very highly trained, decorated police officers who got trained by the FBI. I know Paul Slower said he got trained by the FBI. So
So
what I'm thinking is, if we have all these people who have been highly decorated and trained for so long, how come we don't have that kind of level of people who are being under them when they
when
were in
you
tenure?
when you don't use it, you lose it. So this is what happens in every single area.
I think that there's been a problem. There is been a problem with where people was concerned through the years. We have decorated people that was well trained, but those are the ones that have been silenced. And if you don't want to be silent, you're being pushed out. Because first and foremost, we have until everything went haywire and all of that, then they turn to the person that they think was most competent for the investigation in that Adriana Young situation, which was McBean.
McBeam.
This is a guy that for years has been in the background, but this is one of the guys that is most highly trained. You understand? I'm not saying that he should be where people want him to be, but I'm saying he should be utilized, and you're supposed to have that confidence in him to say, listen, we know that you're trained in this area. We want people to get that guidance from you. So we're giving you that scope and that opportunity to exercise all your knowledge so that you can get people trained under that. Set up programs. One of the things that you see, I don't know if it is, but there is something called um compulsory or compulsory training on a yearly basis or a bi-yearly basis.
There's a problem with that, brother. You
have
could train every day. If you're not actively doing it in a situation, you're gonna lose it.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why you're reminded on a yearly basis, and you have to pass an exam by 100%.
I kind of agree with Sherwin there, because I'll tell you why I say this, Martin. If our police officers had every 6 months a refresher course and an upgrade, and those who did not come up to scratch, you gotta go and learn it all over again. It will keep those officers who are at a certain level. They will develop officers with a certain level of integrity, because that's one of the things that's playing in the
Standard.
Guyana force. Yeah, standard. And once you have people with standards and integrity, you're gonna have a better police force, obviously. But again, you can't wholly. A lot of people kind of throw. It's like what I said on radio. When somebody gets rescued by the police from the bandits, the robber man them, and so it's, yeah, the police doing their job. When something tragic happens, like the Adriana Young situation, they lump all the police in one barrel and throw them away. That can't work, bro. Not for me. Because we know for a fact they have rogue officers. For example, the officer who told the supervising officer that, oh, we looked at the camera and we saw her leave in a vehicle. He's supposedly in jail.
For
Of
sure.
course. Of course, I.
Supposed to be in jail. You give your supervising officer wrong information. The man wasn't there on the scene.
He costing them 100 million right now.
I'll tell you, it's a whole listen. The thing,
Uh,
and this is where you talk about when you have rogue officers in there that feel that, well, policing is not what they are trained to do, but what they believe they should be doing. This is
jail.
not belief who you should be doing.
Go home or jail.
Exactly, you operate based on what you know your job is supposed to be, and obviously you're supposed to be protect. The first thing, what is your motto? Protect and serve, in it.
Correct.
You're supposed to be protecting and to serve. So in the situation that happened over the river, they really have one. When I heard the superintendent or whoever who was on the scene, he got suspended. I was like, so what happened to the subordinate officers who will lose their job? Because
Everybody on duty
they're
that
supposed to lose
day
their
should have
job at
went
the
home, brother. Well,
all right.
naturally, I don't. So everybody wants them to lose their job. You can't just lose your job.
No.
Just them have a contractual arrangement.
Not just so you're losing your job, but if, of course, you have to go through an investigation to see if you operated within the particular standards of what you're supposed to be operating as a police officer. If you
Correct.
did not, then you go under, you can get prosecuted too and go in prison. This is why, and you've heard me say this numerous times, Sherwin, in private, on radio, and even on this show. Guyana needs an internal investigative unit to deal with the police in Guyana. And they do not need to be cops. Cops cannot investigate cops. Because you are going to be in a fraternity of police officers. Worse yet, if they're involved if they belong to a fraternity, is worse. And
Yeah.
most police officers, judges, and lawyers belong to fraternities. The only way you break that fraternity is you have a very strong investigative group who can penetrate and get the factual information. Because they're not going to go against each other unless there's information that holds one of them. You're liable. There's no way you could get away. There's
I
video
know
and there's also other evidence.
I know that works two ways to Malachi, because so like we said, in that situation, a subordinate officer, right, can tell an officer, which is an ordinary constable, right, do X, Y, and Z. This is what I want you to do. But the regular constable knows that he's within his rights to do his job the right way. Now, when you put the pressure, if he said, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do the right way to cover myself. Other than that, there must be a representative for that guy. Other than people coming and pressure that guy, you get transferred, you get sent away, this happened to him, that happened to him.
I
You
get
got-
it wrong,
They're
but I
supposed to
don't
be-
even think they have a union.
they're
That's what I'm
supposed-
saying. There must be some kind of representative for a lot of these guys that wants to do their job the right way, because you cannot have people running over them when they turn out. Every day some people go to work to do what they're supposed to do safely, safeguard themselves to go home back to their families. Not everybody wants to be in the
Well,
risk taking.
You see, I agree with you there totally, Sherwin, and I do believe that the government of the day has got to look at, again, overall reform of the systems that are running. Because I think a lot of the frustration with the Guyanese public and overall is because of the frustration with the systems that are running. The systems are antiquated. The systems are too old. They're not working. And they're breaking down because we're in a modern age. We're moving forward with all this technology. but our legal framework and all the legal work is not up to times with that. Because let me show you this. One, like I mentioned earlier, where you should have a police, there is a police service commission in Guyana. There is not an independent body, however, separate from that policing group that investigates the police. There is no body in Guyana that is legally bound to investigate lawyers for misconduct. There is no legal body in Guyana bound, to investigate the magistrates and the judges. Because remember, they have to judge based on case law. They just don't come up with something out there. They can't just yank something out of the air. And a lot of the times, I have been in court. Sad to say this in Guyana. I have been in court in Guyana. We have seen a judge do this. Tell a guy who was gonna be sentenced, right? Go look outside the window and see how much car there out there. And when he go and look out and see how much cars out there, he come back and say, seven cars I see out there. The man say, good. Well, it's then you get 7 years. No, and I can tell you who said that. I see Fung and Fat do that there. You understand? And I'm saying, well, what kind of insanity I really witnessing is like, this is what's happening in a court system. Now, these kind of things is where and sensible Guyanese who are thinking about returning to Guyana, they don't want to have to run into a legal system with that level of foolishness. People do not want to come back who own land, come back and you find somebody squatting on your land, and I have to go through a judicial system that will take me 7 to 8 years to get the people off my land, so I could get my land that is mine, that I have the deed. Because if I throw them off, somebody might turn it into something political. It's chaos. So you need to have reform of the system, all the systems, because the police system needs reform. They need to have anytime they step out of that system. And Martin said something to the police commissioner about 2 years ago. He said, why not have the tasers so that if they go out there, people can't say we shoot you.
Brother.
We tase you.
So, of course, while I did ask for certain things when I came back home, I did also say we need to see total chaos, or we need to see everybody going to court. So now we do have everybody going to court and asking for 100 million, because that is the max amount you could ask for, right? Yeah. I don't know why there's a cap on it, because if you do me something wrong and I know I well in me right, I need $1 billion, I need almost $1 trillion. You understand? So don't put no cap on my problems.
You want the whole treasury.
Come on, man. But
you want the whole treasury.
Of course, brother. I think I deserve it after my trauma. You know how much trauma I gotta go through for deal with the system of Guyana right now. So when I came in and I asked, why is it we are not using tasers? Because it is legal to carry a firearm once you have your license, your permits, and everything.
Yeah.
But everybody who have a firearm today is afraid to use that. So now I'm looking at it like, well, I went to America at 18. First thing, well, I didn't have a gun then, but my older brother had a gun right away. So I had access to a gun. And if I'm understanding the laws of Florida, especially correctly, it is almost a free-for-all state, almost, right? So I am able to, well, my brother was able to purchase a firearm, put it in the house, right? And anybody in the house of a certain age was able to use the firearm to defend the house, right?
In case of an intruder.
Correct. So I'm looking at Guyana and say, well, our laws is set up. If I am the licensed firearm holder and my wife is not, or my friend or my whoever in the house is not, they can't even touch it.
Touch the weapon.
So you telling me if thief coming in my house and me wife they're closer to the gun, she can't pick it up. Now I gotta be mad. We all have to be mad at this point. Because Me wife Ben pick up the gun and empty it. And then I
Well,
can help she load it back and empty it again.
and we know the court system will then drag her through the court system to say, well, you weren't the one who had the gun. Now, this is why we say reform is very
Correct.
important. But I want to read this comment from somebody in the comments, Fiona Capel. And she says, it's not about training only, but it's who they're getting instructions from, because you can't do as you please if you know there will be drastic consequences. They would do different. This is what we're talking about.
I agree.
This is exactly what we're talking about. But one of the problems right there too, Martin, who you're getting the instruction from is very important. Because if that person who you're getting the instruction from is breaking the rule, because as we know, when political season come around, people break the rules because they believe they're doing it in the interest of their party that they support.
Yep.
Simple as that. It's not in the interest of all Guyanese. This is a job that I do. I stick into my job. When I go to the ballot is when I make that decision on who I. It's not that. The actual politics goes into the job situation. It goes into who you associate with. It goes into a lot. All right. I don't want the political climate in Guyana is just short of what happens in Jamaica. Jamaica is trying to get rid of that political climate while Guyana is buying into that kind of political climate, which is very sad. Because in Jamaica, it has gotten to a stage where Jamaica is very separated because of politics. The gangs have infiltrated the politics until it is very dangerous. This is why Jamaica has that level of notoriety for violence and all that. No, we don't want to get there. I don't want to be living in North Rhineville and I can't walk over Aubrey Barker to go in south. Who want to live like that? Let Jamaicans keep that if they want to have that. But I know they are running from that. They're trying to change that. Right? So why are we trying to buy into that kind of thing? We shouldn't buy into that. We should have a climate in our country where everybody feels quite free to, one, express how they feel about a situation, who they support, and nobody mustn't take it as, well, I take it personally. Well, if you don't support my candidate, well, I hate you for life. Or I would, if we doing something. No, that's not the situation. The situation is, if I see that somebody is working in my interest and I think that that's working for me, I have the right to say, well, I working with that because that's in my best interest. If you don't think it's working in your best interest, well, it's just ain't working for you. You would have to get with the people who are, you can see, working in your best interest then, and get them to get into a position of power. And this is where I see a lot of individuals, for example, in the opposition crossing over to the PPP. And I'm looking at the opposition people and they're saying, oh, these people are sellouts, these people are Judas and all of that. But I'm noting a particular thing. Why didn't they say that about Carl Greenwich, though? Because I think everybody knows this. Carl Greenwich was in APNU. And as soon as the PPP came into government, Carl Greenwich went and worked with the PPP from then to now. And he's working with Hugh Todd, dealing with the whole border controversy. He deals with foreign affairs matters and all of that. So is it what to me is like a selective thing where they say, oh, this one is a Judas because he did that.
It's a lack of understanding, brother.
I think that's the way a system should work.
That is the way I think it should work.
Without any partiality. So if we have qualified people in your country,
exactly,
also with the experience, we should feel free
to reach out to the man,
to offer the individuals a job, well paid, right? Even individuals should work without feeling any way, intimidated That
because I'm not politically affiliated or I don't support your party. That's not the
The,
issue.
the problem with that is when we start to foster that whole racial dynamic of things, because that is really where it comes from, at least in my opinion, right?
Yep.
When we say, oh, the PNC is all black and the PPP is all Indian and the AFC is whatever. Now, when I look at all parties, I'm like, but there's an Indian here in charge. There's a black in charge. Everybody did it. You understand me? So I don't naturally see the segregation and separation, right?
But what we do, we gotta still accept. We do have some political appointed that is really square pegs in wrong hole because of
that's a fact, Sherwin.
And they're buying like the brother.
But
That
let
is
me
but
get to
that's
this.
the people who've been there forever.
That happens worldwide though. That happens anyway, all over.
It happens worldwide. But let me say this. Let me say this. When you look at the political dynamic in Ghana, like Martin was pointing out, it's fully funny. Because Amna Ali passed away the other day. Rest in peace. She was executive member of the PPP. Winston Murray, rest in peace. He's an Indian guy. He was the general secretary for the PNC. Right? Dr. Roger Luncheon, general secretary of the PPP. You understand? So I'm like, where? And this goes right back to what Martin's saying. This is not an issue of race happening in the country, my brother. This is an issue.
Stupidity.
It's stupidity. It's people using the issue of race to push an agenda, brother. You understand? Because when you look at every single party,
brother, they got Amerindian, they got Indian, they got mix, everybody that is.
Right.
I look at from the AFC, I look at the PNC, I look at the BUP, everybody is in the same pot. Just like it should be.
Race. That's how it's supposed to be.
This is Guyana, we got 6 different faces of people.
Yep, that's it.
That is how it should be.
That's how it
but
should
there's
be.
a selective group of individuals, I like to say the older folks, who is stuck in their ways. Like unfortunately, my grandfather would be an example of this in certain parts.
These dinosaurs need for hold on to some old rhetoric from back then of separation.
Correct. And that is not the time we are in. We in the is what the Indian man said to the Indian man and turn it into a whole issue at the meeting.
It happened yet?
That time was not this time. As well as when he said this time. Yeah.
No, you gotta use the same tool for back then. This time a long time. This time
that is not that, brother. So me as a young individual, I'll always come back to my age, whichever age I'm at that point in time as I'm speaking. I'm currently 30. So in 30 years, I honestly can say, well, because I know about growing up literally behind the PNC, right? And I still am here. But I also know about passing the PPP office. I was showing my nephew today, this is where the PPP with the Freedom House is, right? Because we was passing in town and I said, because he saw the police and everything, and he asked what guy, so I said, there's what Jack the others there, and the whole the PPP party. If you look at the side of the building, there's the PPP sign and the cup and everything there. I might be wrong, but this is the headquarters, right? And I was educating him. He's 14 years of age. So I was able to give information that he didn't knew. That in meantime, I was able to say, hey, this is a little bit that I know, right? About the politics and the parties. But imagine me telling he like in me grandfather time, I would say, oh, no, don't worry, but you got to worry about with the PNC office there. That don't make no sense, brother. You can't guide a nation of people in that manner. This is why personally I don't listen to my mother when it comes to certain things. I can't listen to my grandparents. And anybody over at least 50, 60, 70, once you get too far up in age, we could have a conversation, but not a fruitful one, because I don't want to leave with your rhetoric of your mindset. You mute, Malachi.
Let me show you one of the things. Sorry, let me show you one of the things that they don't tell you with these political parties that is a full trick, right? This is where the bait and switch does happen. Or I would like to say the cloak with the dagger behind there's walk you. Now, what they don't tell you, and this is for both parties, because the PNC is a strike off of the PPP, right? So they have the same internal working structure. That internal working structure says you cannot step off on your own and make statements without the general secretary or the party members agreeing that that is a statement that's going out there. Y'all know this?
Yes.
So, for
Well, that
example,
happened a couple times to Ali.
no, I'm telling you, I know. Listen, it's a party
No, man,
policy.
no. So,
It don't happen like that.
Why Rabbit that was slapped back in the days.
Man, look, I can't listen. I think the person who get the most backhand was he. He get the most backhand slap. You understand? He get a couple backhand slap well. But
seriously,
no, seriously. But you gotta understand the dynamics of parties and the system of parties. Now, when we talk about reform, we're not only talking about the legal, let's say all the laws that govern Guyana, because the only time when Guyanese recognize that a country got enough laws, when they go to the US, there's other what this place is a place of laws. You can't do this, you cannot do this. There's a law for that. There's a law for this. Obviously, because what they're doing is planning for the future. They're not sitting there and saying, as soon as something happens, and I'll show you how simple things happen in the US and they change the law. A guy wheeling down the street in a wheelchair and something happens and he couldn't get onto the pavement before he get knocked down. They're like, all right, here what happened. Every single pavement has got to have an area after every couple of feet that can allow a wheelchair to access that that pavement. So no longer we have wheelchairs on the actual road thoroughfare. So they must be able to cross from pavement to pavement, and there is space on the pavement for them and all of that.
But that's called not being lazy. You have a team, or you have
Thinking forward.
a department that is always on top of every detail of, because remember, why it happens like this here is because so many people can come up against the city for things and win for things that they feel it is a disadvantage to them because of how the city put the codes. So they got to make sure that they always readjust to ensure that they protect themselves from whatever it is that people could come up against them with.
Well, one of the things we need in Guyana, seriously, and when I say seriously, look at Georgetown, right? Have you ever heard of the mayor? And I've looked at a lot of the mayors, and I was looking at them and I'm wondering, how are these guys really mayors and they don't do certain things, or mayors of certain of Georgetown? Have you ever heard of them calling a meeting with civil society, right? For the civil society to express to them some of the issues that they have in the city, express to them how we can further reduce garbage, how we can have zoned areas, how we can improve the business areas in the capital city.
I think at this point,
Their focal points are in these areas.
at this point, we should just use that town hall or city council, whatever they call it, as a historical site.
Yeah,
and
it's a
leave
museum,
it as
a
that.
historical site. Yeah, it's a historical.
Because them people in the office, they're wasting we time. Keep the guard. The guard is needed. Everybody in the facility wasting we time and money.
I'm telling you, like, what is these people really getting paid for? It's like the same thing. Okay, I don't know if people in Guyana fully understand this structure of government, right? But a structure of government is not just the ruling party, especially in Guyana, where we have a 65-seat parliament. You have the constituents of the opposition, which is represented in that parliament. Now, How do you have those guys walk out the parliament and nobody from that constituent says, is we already do it?
brother.
Because when you all walk out, who really representing we in there with those guys doing what they perceive want to do?
That's why the law should be passed that it's not who a party pick. It should be representatives from
You have to be voted in. I
who
said this, Martin said this. You have to represent a constituent and get your
so
vote
that
in there.
you could be a main person in parliament and you actually come there to represent different laws around the country that would affect your area, your place, your people. So it becomes an interest. And if you can't work hard enough, you know you're gonna be voted out the next time. So you're gonna work hard to stay in.
Or in some cases, Sherwin, when you fall into sleep after you're done eat,
Right.
and you sleep through the session them and nothing ain't really coming out to you, we hearing you in no debate. We could recall you and say, well, here what happened. You just there in there for eat and collect a bread. We
Check
need
up that.
somebody who could be in there who is arguing and putting
Yeah.
valid points on the table.
It needs to be that thing where you just bring in people. Like I said, Parliament, yeah, we understand the government is gonna select their ministers, but the Parliament itself should be of more constituents.
I
So
Yeah.
think Sherwin, even the ruling government ministers needs to be selected because there's a
Yeah,
lot of them who's in them office that wasting we time, brother.
Yeah, they
Like
wasting-
Ramson and them.
Ramson wasting-
Them man don't belong in those places. If we
No, they-
can't have the right persons
Oh, you
in
can't
the
put,
respective area,
but you can't put the government cannot. I would say, good. This guy might be good in a different area because of what he studied or who he is, how he's educated. But because you just want to make sure that yes, he's a part, but bro, we ain't got no other place for you, but you're gonna work there.
no, we don't.
But
We
really-
don't need seat fillers, brother.
No, we don't need seat fillers and we don't need square peg in wrong hole. If the
And
government needs
you
to,
gotta make sure that and these are the things where like here when it's supposed to be a ministry of the education in America, you gotta go before the whole
there's a
um,
council. There's a
the whole
council.
house.
that you have to-
you gotta go before the whole house, and
Yeah.
they gotta scrutinize you, do whatever when they done when to hear what you coming up with. Then they got to vote, hoping that you can get through.
No, but these are the kind of things. These are the kind of things that need to happen in Guyana. For example,
Because
if
it's
you're
crazy.
if you're putting individuals in key positions, for example, the DPP,
Yeah,
right?
all of that too.
All
Yeah.
of these people have to come before a council that's made up of government officials and opposition.
Correct.
And those people ask them questions on particular things regarding their stance on certain issues. For example, you have a situation now where you have a judge who is lobbying and protesting on behalf of a particular political party. I'm not going to mention that particular political party. But then he goes into court where he's supposed to be pronouncing and passing judgment on a particular situation, but he is biased because of his
Yeah,
political
yeah.
stance.
This is why it might be funny, but this is why when Darky said we got scripts in the highest set of office.
Exactly.
He's
It's
right.
a fact. He wasn't lying because the guy is a script. What are you doing that? And he's a judge. He gotta be a script. He remember these scripts. He remember these scripts straight up.
Brother, I born and growing guy, you know, left here at the age of 18, just after I turned 18, literally a month after. Went to America, got indoctrinated into the system of America, and I studied, over time. So I would have looked at different countries and how they operate. And when I come back to Guyana, because really and truly, the one reason I started to come back to Guyana is when Gray just stood up and said, all Guyanese should come back home. and help develop. And, he gave a very good speech. I think he's a man of many words. And I believe that man. And I take million life savings and it took me 5 years to set up one company, brother. I know I looking for who's the right person for sue. I know. Because the level of incompetence from top to bottom that you have to deal with. For instance, yesterday I go to the deeds registry. And so I've been there since Friday. Now when you go there, you got to pull a number, state where you come from, pull a number, and you wait till your number call. No problem. We have somewhat of a system. The problem with that is everybody comes, pull a number, and some people will leave. So me end up with a number 7 and the guard man that number 1 somebody. And I gotta wait till he start over. So I left. Friday I left. Monday I went back to the deeds registry and I say, "It's happened." Now, me being a dunce, I should have went back with number 7 from Friday. So I threw it in a corner because, it's a good law-abiding citizen. So I said, I could go and pick a new number when I go.
You're a morally upstanding guy.
Brother, when I go there, you pick number 35. Now the man starting from 99 and he got to come back.
You got to come all the way back down to 1 and then climb back up to 30.
Brother, I says best I did bring back me number 7 I had from since last week. Now, it took me 3 hours to go upstairs and collect me business certificate. A process that when I walk in and sat down with the person in charge took 2 minutes. Yeah. 2 minutes. When the girl says, "Sit down, please," I say, "Ma'am, I'm tired. I don't want to sit down." The girl don't pull up my paper and tell me, "Oh, this is yours?" So me even had to sit down. A 2-minute process. Took 3 hours just to reach to her. Now, so I don't know who's in charge of the deeds registry. Who's the person in charge or the people in charge? But if y'all like your job, don't like y'all go through this again, because I come home to set up business and I got 10 more other people behind me to do the same thing. And if we all have to go through the same stupid process, I will make it, like our critics say, I will make it a job for end your career. I will make it my sole job to end your career.
Well, you see, this is what we were talking about earlier, Martin. The issue of the systems that are running. All right. You see, the system was created for colonial time, right? And because we have not upgraded that system to match the changing Guyana, our 59 years of independence from colonialism, which we're supposed to be altering the laws, because we have laws that you can't beat out your rug after 6 o'clock. You can get arrested. If you don't know this, that's in our laws, Now, we have to get rid of all of those colonial laws and sit down as Guyanese and formulate laws that benefit us as a people. For example, we don't need certain draconian laws. We are a small population of Guyanese that can have an influx of people coming in to work in our environment. We want to have an environment where people understand, listen, coming into Guyana, which I think the government has started the first stage of it, but because they have not actually completed by adding that updated copyright is where the issue is, because you have a local content that says, okay, somebody coming in to set up a business, you got to partner with a Guyanese, even if they don't have a cent. All right, we understand all that is good for that structure. But what happened to the other structures that are happening right now? For example, we know we lost Pepper Pot. We know we lost Cheese Straw. We know we lost Demerara. So come on, we have things that we have to protect. We have things that we have to, we have to now hunker down on them. And I'm glad that Frank Anthony is now talking about, Barbados and Guyana collaborating with this, with pharmaceuticals. You understand? Because I think Guyana has great potential in pharmaceuticals. I don't know if you all know,
Mm-hmm.
but Limacol at one point in time was one of the biggest products out of Guyana across the Caribbean. It was. I can tell you, it's two product. It's one product used to rival um, Limacol. Was another product out of Barbados called Alcalada Glacier, right? Which was like they own green and Guyana own is the yellow with the line. But Limacol was the leading product across the region in the early 80s. But because of our regime of not having that, you know, that structured IP and all of that, we lose out because in marketing your products out of Guyana, you're gonna find a whole heap of problems because you're not protected. How are you protected when your country is not formally under that umbrella as well? So there's a lot to look at in terms of the law, and I'm hoping that since the other day the U.S. team with the French team came in to talk to the Attorney General's chamber about the copyright issue, and like my brother always said, he kicked the can down the road some more by saying, "Well, we're going to look to CARICOM to help us out on that front." When you could have we looking to CARICOM for Mr. Nandalal?
Keep in mind, at that point, we were the head of CARICOM.
Exactly, and we still are.
And
The head office is still here.
correct.
It's not going to move.
So I don't know which office he's looking at, or if he's going to build a new office and then look out the window and say, hey, guys, but you have the power to summon all these people, or at least the
Listen,
main countries, and
all
bring
he
them
has
to the
to do,
table.
the lawyers that formulate a lot of the constructs and the laws for IP in Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados, they come here when they are CARICOM heads of government meetings here. He
Brother,
could get in contact with them, and he also has us he could reach out to. That we are the ones who started talking about it 20 years ago.
the fact
He wasn't
that
even Attorney General then.
we're still having to deal with these issues. Now, so I understand why people always like to blame the government, right? And for me, the government is not just the ruling party, it is
No.
the opposition and
And
everybody in parliament.
yeah, they all getting paid by our money.
Those people make up the government. If for some reason the majority of Guyanese people don't understand that, if you see something going wrong, don't blame the PPP. Blame
All
the
of them.
PNC also, or APNO
All of them.
AFC, whoever is in charge there in government. Not just one group of people need to be blamed.
And,
Everybody.
and, and to further compound that situation too, Martin, do you know that a lot of the committees in Parliament are headed by opposition members? They are the head of those committees.
Brother,
They are the ones who making decisions.
brother. The fact that in my 30 years of experience, I could only go so far back. We have no copyright. We have a backward education system because the No Child Left Behind initiative is garbage. Our health system is now coming up to a standard, but it's still garbage.
Well,
The garbage problem is a garbage.
right.
We got so much issues that it is simple things that you could sit down and fix it.
Fix. Listen, Martin, when it comes to fix, let me tell you this. Guyana at this stage, I'm not going back in the past. I'm saying at this stage has to think about and should be thinking about public transportation. This whole stupidness with people changing their price in the night for tell you, well, the price changed from morning time for go over the river and all them things got done. Public transportation have to come in. Okay?
Even all of that, brother. I love my country, but sometimes I don't want to here. I just feel like if I there, I can become a scraper or whatever term
Yeah,
they
whatever.
in place at that time. The public, so I took a bus the other night going to a studio session, right? Intermediate. From the bus that is go Pleasance. I think there's a 45 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I took that bus and I came off at Waterloo Street. So when I took a bus from Turkine Sapphire to Georgetown, is $100. Depends on which bus you catch, it's $120.
Mm-hmm.
For me to take a bus from the park to Waterloo Street, which in most cases a walking distance, but it's nighttime, me able to walk for get robbed, right? I looking out for my own benefit. The man tell me $200, don't matter where you go, whether they going to Pleasant or right down there.
Yeah, you have to pay him $200.
Now, whoever's in charge, so at this point, I will personally make it my duty as a Guyanese citizen, as a true patriot, to call everybody out on their stupidness, because whoever's in charge of the transportation sector, you don't need to go home and start catching them buses.
Let me say this.
We got to agree to disagree. Listen. The man walking a road, it's just like the transportation system here. Walking a road. If you go in 2 blocks up and you swipe your card, right?
The same price.
Same $250. You go in the full length, plus you could take a transfer, it's still $250.
But brother,
all right.
Don't pack me up in a big stinking bus.
Well, wait.
You mind paying me money, my G?
Here the part, Sherwin, you realize. Sherwin, it is not the price, and everybody knows this, right? In Guyana, if there is a route, let's say you're going to Plaisance and the bus going Plaisance, there is short drop and there is the full fare to the full look to the point of this to the end of that particular trip where the bus goes to and turn back to town, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I jump in South bus and I come off before they turn in to go Arby Backer, I could give you $80 and come off. And that's acceptable. That's short drop.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to demand, what Martin is pointing out here to you is the demand, which in the minibus associations is tell these minibus drivers they cannot do that. Where they have a practice of, in the night, like you rightfully point out, a short drop. They change the price. For example, even going over the river. A man told me a night where to go to Phoenix Park, which is a normal, I think it's $200 to $300 in the day. This guy told me, well, anybody going in, he boss got to give you $500.
Brother, God forbid you even decide to take a car.
It's over. You're broke.
God forbid you decide to take a taxi.
No money to go work in Parliament.
You know, this is where we actually got to look at where the infrastructure, not to benefit business or investors,
but to ensure the population.
Have the population bring in. You have a control. First thing first, it controls transportation, controls a certain type of in the sense of security, in the sense of monitoring people according to how you see them travel. You could actually have all
carry out census, demographic censuses,
yeah,
on
all these different things for real, yeah. Right? You it's not a wild thing, because at the end of the day, you know how to invest into the transportation system, what more needs to be added, and you put people in more comfortable spot, and more people feel more at right, not going in a private man bus we could turn and tell, hey, jump out, me want you, me boss. These type of things, you know what I mean?
Let me ask the population of Guyanese this, and even more so the person who's in charge of the transportation department. Do you think it's fair to me to take a bus or a car, we paying the most money, from Georgetown to Linden, and I paying $1,500 in a car, right? $1,500, and a bus is $1,000, and coming from Sapphire to Georgetown is $2,500. That make no sense at all. It's best I start walking.
Malachi, Malachi is still on
No,
mute.
no, but this is the insanity, right? That Martin and I have been. It's how many years since we started collaborating and doing radio? Since we started radio a couple of years ago, we started talking about the price control board. That's one of the talking points we started on. Where we point out, and this is how it started when we went in the market, and you realize one stall on one side of the road, right? You're watching the road, one side of the road have, let me say, mango, $200. On the next side, got the very same mango, $500.
Mm-hmm.
You wondering, like, wait, hold on, what's the difference? Is a difference in weight or something when you decide to check it out? No. The only difference, there's the same mango. You go over there, you paying $200 for three. You go over there, you paying $500 for three. Same mango.
And so let's expand on that more. This is why the supermarket now system in Guyana is winning, the Chinese and them,
Exactly.
right? Because when I go to the market, I go in that for the natural products, right? The fresh fruits and foods and things. I either start from, I believe it's Alexander Street, all the way down to Bordeaux, right?
Yep.
And I just ask, because I know what I'm going for. You know, men just know what the guy in the shop, right? So I know I going for 5 greens or 10 greens and a different variety of fruits and whatever. I just start from the top and I just ask, what's your price? And I just go all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And I just then take out me $5,000 or $10,000 and walk back up. And I get into the cheapest price because at this point, they already know who's cheap and who's good.
Yep.
Right? So this is why our people in the market system now is not winning, and they can't win because the Chinese come. Chinese selling everything now. Chinese selling nice fruit in French. Like I in America. I could come and take out me mangoes cold and eat it right there. You understand, man? And then we complain of how the Chinese come in and take up all the business.
No. Let me just elaborate a little bit on what you're talking about there, right? One of the things that the very vendors in that very market board, they don't realize that they have in their hand, but have not fully woken up to realize, and I really can't say the vendors, I should say the committee that really runs the vending there, don't realize. Do Guyanese realize that that is the first drive-through market in the world?
Lack of knowledge.
Show me another drive-through market where you could come off a main thoroughfare, drive through the market, and as you drive through, you could shop, you could smell, you could taste and buy. Show me a market that has the capacity, capability to do that.
Telling you, we didn't even know what we got, brother.
It's a unique tourism selling product. It's a unique culture of Guyana overall. Because you don't have nowhere else. You gotta get out, you can't go in the supermarket or go to the market. In Guyana, you could drive through. Now, sensible people would be thinking, instead of thinking poverty brain, sensible people would be thinking, but listen, here's what we do. We set up our stores in such a way that allows the traffic to flow freely. We don't block the road, but we set up our display in such an elevation that you could see everything when you're driving through and make a choice quick. You understand? And we move the system along. So and what we do too, we kind of standardize everything. Not everybody, don't get licorice. You can't sell everything. The man next to you can't sell pak chai and you selling pak chai too. You understand? They have to. This is the thing when we talk. When I spoke about earlier, when I talk about zoning in the city, we learn certain things about how we operate in building, these future cities and all that. We have to come up to the times. Zoning is a big part of that. So the other day not the other day, I think it was yesterday, I saw the previous mayor, what's his name? Umbridge Narayan, talking about the city. And I was like, but you was a waste of time mayor. You all did some nonsense, including attempting to bring in that what do they call it? The parking meter,
Parking meter.
the parking meter situation. No,
That
you
was
don't
one of the
even.
most stupidest
No,
implementation.
serious. I mean, you don't even have accessible roads. How many roads do you have in Georgia? You could count them. Are you telling people they have to pay for parking? There was no other initiative, and this is what I talk about when I talk about like we seem to be putting people in position and they don't have a brain for that position that they in.
Even now, right? And this is a problem for me as a historian, as for somewhat, and a somebody who want to preserve Guyana, right? The St. Barnabas School and Church, I believe the church itself was one of the first and the oldest church in Guyana, which
Yeah,
means naturally we already knocked out our history and we put care for park there. No problem. The problem with that now, and this is right on the kind of board of it.
yeah,
The problem with that is I am thinking as a futuristic person, hey, we could build a 3-level tier parking lot or even a 10-level tier parking lot. We have the heavy machinery, we have the infrastructure now to do it. I would believe Guyanese would prefer to block off a section of Regent Street for a week or a month or so, right? Feel the inconvenience to come the month after and park your big fancy Range Rover and whatever car you have nicely in the garage. But we want when it's rain, we driving over the model, the pool of sap, feces, and everything else that's rolling out from them drain, even the dead, the burial ground across the road. We want to drive over all of that, tiptoe, and then go to the supermarket and tiptoe back and come back in with care. Now you see how we don't think? And this is why I prefer the mayor's office to just turn into a historical place. Because if you're knocking down the history, then just leave your office and done, brother.
I mean, listen, a lot of the initiatives that they should have really been putting in place to improve the city with whatever revenues or taxes that they're supposed to be garnering from the city. I can understand. And I think what is going to happen in after elections, I think the government of itself is going to be taking over the responsibility of the transportation and the garbage.
Please do.
Because what you need to have, there are two things in a city that you really can't mess with, which is the transportation of the people in that city and the garbage collection in that city. And I think based on the amount of capital that we've now gotten injected, I would suggest that the government go ahead and have those things standardized on the public sector. Because as we see it now, having it under the private sector is creating issues. If City Hall every couple months has to go into negotiations with these companies that have ownership of the garbage collection things because they want to have an increase in payments and all these things, the city is going to be constantly in this state where at the whim of the people who own these entities, they could say, listen, my contract was not fulfilled. And in a lot of cases, it's mismanagement by the city hall where they have not been able to pay the contractors. So the contractors resort to, okay, well, we can down tools until at least our money comes in, or at least some, because they can't work for months and pay out of their bank book their workers, and they're not getting their money from City Hall.
So I might be wrong, right? But I'm thinking it as I go. In America, the city collects the garbage, right?
Correct.
And I haven't seen any private agency collecting garbage. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any.
In the
Right?
US, no. In the US, no.
Good.
No,
So
they do.
In New York. Maybe in New York. Maybe in
They
New York.
do, in New York, they do have private trucks that is specialized, especially for commercial garbage.
all right. So it works. So
Yeah.
big private got their own sector, but they
Yeah.
also, I'm pretty sure, dumping that right back into the city. because not like they got their own private dump.
No, they're paying too. They're paying to dump.
They
Correct.
pay. No.
So they're going to charge a big bread and pay off, which is the government making money at this point, right?
Yeah.
They
This is
still
what I'm
meeting
saying.
taxes and
This
everything.
is what I'm saying. The fields to burn or incinerate, they're running that. The landfill, they're running that. So how is this is what I'm saying, but City Hall. So when Original Ryan and them talking, I'm like, so but what you are really doing about the city though? Because these are your money generators there.
We can't encourage the government guys to just take on the garbage problem because it's already a problem. I doubt anybody coming up with any harebrained idea to do something and fix them. We're going to end up with the same problem if the government take it over. They're not good management of things. And this is factual, right? I haven't seen any government that manage any country properly. But
you see, the thing is simple. It's called privatizing, right? And if you privatize money, things like garbage, right?
Yeah.
And you got a company that is not a friend or somebody. You say, hey, we want a company, so you just come together and tell them, man, go and buy a couple trucks and come in and whatever. You have to make sure that you have a company that you know for sure has that capability, right? Has been in the business for a while.
Yeah, experienced in it.
Yeah, you're competent enough to make sure that if ever you don't have to tell me, oh, I gotta wait on your money or your payment for me to do what I gotta do. You got a program that you doing because you got enough for whatever is gotta be done.
And
we continue to cater for the people that we know and the people we want to help. We putting it back in, bro.
Yeah, that is what happening. That is exactly what happened in Sherwin. Because
hold on.
A lot of these companies, like you rightfully said, they just buy a couple of trucks and they get a contract.
Yeah,
correct. So hold on. So that is why doing that is a problem, right? So let me finish what I was going to say earlier. If the government is going to take over that department, I would applaud you to do it because now you have the resources to do it. But they cannot do it without industrializing things, right? Which is the system that we speak of. The reason why we have an industry for things is we have a dump. We have 2 dump currently in Guyana and probably more.
In Georgetown, I think we have 2 landfill sites.
Good. We don't need a landfill. How dumb are we? We need an industry that is going to burn, recycle, or do whatever with it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Martin. What you have to juxtapose there is what you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time in Guyana's recorded history, we're at this point where we can start to literally think about things that we've seen elsewhere that can benefit Guyana, that we want. Basically, correct. All right? It's the first time we got there. So don't let us beat ourselves up too much. What we have to say is that starting as we go forward, we need to have improvements in, for example, garbage collection and waste disposal has got to change. We have to change our culture of that. We have to now introduce the culture of recycling, because if we're going to maintain this trajectory as this green economy, this nation that is leading the world in eco development, we also have to bear in mind that the plastic still coming into our country.
Big time.
All right, big time. The styrofoams that was banned is still managing to reach in the place. I don't know how. I think a lot of that is coming cross border from Suriname and from Brazil. And I think the government and GR really needs to stamp down on that, because if it's a banned product, it's not supposed to be in the market space. All right. So that's one of the things they got to look at. But we have to look at overall at how we recycle, how we control and manage Georgetown, especially when it comes to the garbage and the garbage collection system. And there is where the mayor and city council, to me,
see, there's even a system that they have here. They have officers that moves around prior.
The inspectors that move around.
Yeah, moves around.
Yeah,
Also, the people on the truck, they have they can issue tickets according to how you dispose your garbage.
correct.
And these are things that has to come into play where you have to get a proper structured system, especially in the city or in the towns, I would say, more in the municipalities.
I
So
I,
that
I, I
these
think though, Sherwin, they would want to do that, but at the same time, you have to look at what is happening now in Guyana, where, and you got to admit this. I mean, as a Guyanese, and
if a man burning if a man burning any garbage in any drum in the backyard, and
yeah,
you call the police or call the city, they're supposed to come and issue them a ticket.
yeah, it's a ticket, and these are the kind of things we're talking about. You
Yeah,
have to regulate the city.
my he the grass and burning up the grass whole afternoon in the whole place full of smoke. People put on their clothes and they line the whole line smelling like smoke.
So
But you know when we have the conversation, the time just really flies. So, fellas, let's try to have a wrap up and your final thoughts, because we dealt with a lot of topics tonight.
yes,
Yeah.
Uh,
yes.
I mean, for the fact that we've been off for, and we're now starting season 2 of the conversation. So, your final thoughts for tonight, guys. It's getting pretty late.
um, so I think I made a post yesterday. As a government, if you can't come up with ideas and solutions to make the citizens of your country lives better, then you have effectively, hold on, then you are effectively ineffective. The people of Guyana deserve better, right?
Hmm.
I think based on all we said and that bit of quote, you could quote me, no problem. You know, if we can't fix simple things, I sorry, I ain't gotta look at one of them Latin America country. Yeah, I can lose a good one.
Well, my final thoughts are this. We are at a very unique place as a country, as 59 years. Guyana is a very young country, basically. Um, Guyana is just a little older than me, right? So that's a very young country. I do think that the government is looking at ways of expanding certain things. I do think they need to also expand the reach of the government itself. When I say expand the reach of the government, I do think that certain ministries are all cramped together. All right. Now, one of the ministries that should be broken apart is the Ministry of Culture, Youth, and Sport. I do believe that those are individual portfolios that need people with the experience to handle um, each one of those. Culture is very important, and you need somebody with a lot of experience and ideas in that area. You also need that person to have people with the information to create think tanks. And this is a problem I believe that the ruling party, although I've heard Irfan talk about it, Jack Dewa has spoken about it, but I haven't heard a lot of the ministers talk about the think tanks that are needed. All right. Now, those are some of the implementations that they need to have, especially going forward. And even now that the opposition is vying, we have election time coming up, they need to put forward proposals that will show that we want greater cooperation with the society, we want greater input by the society. That means we will be setting up these regimes of think tank. Look, I brushed through VPAC just quickly. I brushed through VPAC's manifesto. It does have some things in there which will jump out at you. But one of the things I have a problem with, and I have a problem with the present administration, is how are you properly implementing these strategies to benefit people after you've told them about it, if the infrastructure for that implementation and development is not there? This is my big problem. It's like the Minister of Culture saying, oh, we did a studio here, we did this here, but how do you do these things without the proper infrastructure legally, the copyright law? That's what we're talking about. So I gotta wrap up my I gotta wrap it up for tonight, but that's what I wanted to say.
Well, for me, I think Guyana in the whole, for every aspect of issues, I think from the top all the way down to the bottom, we have to be careful with over politicizing everything that comes into play, because it causes a lot of effects even on people that needs so much help in the country.
Yeah, man.
It steers away from where it should be focused on, and people eventually things just go haywire, and the real people that needs or should be having the help, those people suffer in the end big time.
Mhm.
So the big players continue ranting for their own attention, while the real essence of the issues is being taken away, and nothing happens. Everything just goes away. So we gotta come down to the levels and be more of a country that is more patriotic in dealing with matters as it should be dealt with from every different agencies. We have to have that kind of confidence in every aspect or every part of these agencies that is set up,
Yeah, we
so
gotta have
that they
constant
can
confidence in
execute
our
and do their
institutions, man. Yep, yep.
job.
That's a
Yep.
fact.
You understand?
That's a fact.
That's what it is. That's
Guys,
it.
guys, you know how it
Yeah,
is. We gotta wrap it up for today. Although this is the comeback. This is the first show. This is the first for season two. This we come back. Check us out
Mhm.
next Tuesday. We're gonna have great topics again. Of course, you can call us. We now got the calling ability. You know what I mean? The calling facility. Sorry, you can call us on 641-0945, and you can call Martin on.
305-713-8595.
Make sure you check us out in the morning on Majestic Music Radio from 8 to 11. The Rush, Guyana's industry show. But you know, we always got the best of Guyanese music, right? We have the best of Guyanese music. Check us out tomorrow. People, peace and love. Let's get that disclaimer before we head out of here.
And the disclaimers read: the views, opinions, and statements expressed on the conversation are solely those of the individual hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Network. The content of this show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility or liability for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice.
All right, everybody. Check us out in the morning. But
yes.
check
We
us out
out here.
next Tuesday for the conversation. We out of here. Peace and love.
Bless you.
Bless up.
Mm.